Hello everyone, I'm Jason White from Amtec, and I'm here today with Clive Bailey of TWB Farms and the Family Forum, and James Palmer from Blade Brothers Asset Finance, did finance and machinery for 12 years, and we wanted to just talk briefly about asset finance and financing machinery in the agricultural industry. Just want to talk about what the options are and how we think there's more options available. So Clive can talk about it from a farmer's perspective, and James is a finance expert. So let's get into it.
Well,
Have a start, James.
not really sure, to be honest. Well, as we were saying before you turned cameras on and stuff, and we all got shy, that it's a subject that comes up on the Farming Forum a lot. This, and I think it's really interesting. Like when you see different farmers' attitudes towards finance. Before we get into the details of all the different options, contract hire and PCP and things that are available in other industries, and why aren't they in agriculture? I think fundamentally the first thing I find quite interesting is just that the attitude towards, some people take very much, you shouldn't buy anything if you can't afford it. If you can't afford to write a check for it right now, well, you shouldn't have it, right? But then other people, I think, take much more of an attitude, well, it's just money, or finance is just another input to the business, just like your sprays and your fertilizer. Without it, you can't facilitate the growth that a business needs. And I think it's particularly interesting right now, so I can touch on some of this about, with obviously what's changed politically in the last 12 months, and maybe what you're seeing with the whole kind of used and the farm machinery market at the moment, Jason, with like farmer confidence, willingness to invest, whether that's, by writing a cash check or taking finance. How's that changing? And ultimately where we're going. So I mean, that's probably a good place to start. Where's the market right now? Are farmers really, GB News leads us to believe, kind of battening down the hatches and selling the farm tomorrow, or has nothing changed and we've got jobs to do still, right?
No, well, a bit of both. I mean, obviously there has been a lot of uncertainty, and I guess that's probably where this whole idea came to me about discussing this whole subject, was because obviously a lot of our customers would have seen we've been doing a lot of focus on the future of farming and what farming looks like in the future, because big thing for all of us. And we've done some surveys. We did a survey last year about people's buying habits and buying machinery, and finance came up with quite a big thing in that. Obviously, as we know, prices of new machines over recent years have gone up.
Yeah.
And so, and then obviously with the uncertainty, a lot of people are saying, well, we've tended to buy second-hand, especially with things like weather patterns might push us into something we haven't planned. So, that came up as a point that second-hand was being an option for a lot of people. And then that point came up about how we go about financing. And I just felt, like you just mentioned then, I think there is a lot of other options, I think, that are available. Maybe flexibility might not be quite the right word, but rather than just saying, if I'm buying it on finance, we may have to look at it's this much a month for 5 years. No, actually, there is ways we can make it work better with my business. And just your point there, I think, if we look at this as a machine, and instead of thinking of it as an asset on my books, it's actually something that I've got to use to grow my business and to survive and succeed. Going back to your point about what the industry looks like, yes, there has been a battening down the hatches to a degree, but a lot of people looking at this as in, well, I've got to keep, I've still got to grow things. Things still break. I still need machines. So in that respect, it's a case of saying, well, how do we be smart about how we buy them, and what we buy, as opposed to maybe just going.
Well, I think politics and economics aside for a moment, I think the last couple of years the weather has probably made a lot of farmers rethink what do we need to get the job done in time. Not just have I got the right tool for the job, if the weather's going to be like this, have I got the capacity? So maybe you think you're seeing more larger stuff being sold, and people getting just buying a bit more capacity for a bit more comfort.
Yeah, and like we say, it crops up and it's unexpected, or obviously from our perspective, we hire as well, so that's been quite good. But I do think there is scenarios, and this is where you step in, James. But here's a farmer and he needs to buy a piece of machinery, can't go out and buy it outright. Where do you start? You're sitting down at a table with.
Yeah. Well, exactly right. To be honest, we sit at a table, discuss the customer. Every customer's different, so every farm's different. If you get two farms the same size or the same crops, you find they're ran completely different generally. And And I find that across the industry. And one word you used earlier was flexibility. And you said, I'm not sure if that's right. No, that is right. As an industry, we need to be flexible, particularly with the political current climate and also with the, like you say, the weather, particularly last few years. Flexibility is key. And I find most of the time with customers, there is a lot of options available, but they don't know what is available, so they don't ask for that. So a lot of what we do is try and draw out how the customer wants to, well, how their business runs, how their income comes in, and then find a way working together to find a flexible way of being able to give them some options for that.
That's the interesting thing about farming, isn't it? I mean, when it comes down to, it's why the forum's so vibrant, I think, in terms of, because there's no right answer. There's always different opinions, different ways of doing stuff. In how you grow crops or look after animals, whatever. Every farm is basically unique, although we're all doing the same thing. We're all doing it in very different ways. And I guess, the way that we kind of secure our assets, whether it be that land or buildings or the machinery need to do the job, that's unique to circumstance as well. I mean, our own farm business over the years, we've gone through periods where we've basically contract hired. I think at one point we owned nothing with an engine on the farm. Like everything, every sprayers, tractors, all of them were contract hired. And that worked really well for us for a period. The deals were right, good, fitted in. It kind of worked well for our accounting situation and tax situation at the time, whatever. But then actually, a few years down the line, that changed. The contract hire started to look expensive. And there was better deals to kind of start to buy, and so hire purchase type deals and whatever. And then when I look at like the way that maybe some of the less farming assets are secured, commonly things like PCP deals, for instance, that you might want to explain a bit more about the detail they work, what people do on like cars, or you could do on your farm pickup and that kind of stuff. That's thing that we're saying earlier, you don't seem to see that effectively finances your use of an asset. You're never going to buy it all because of PCP, you've got that balloon at the end, right?
Yes.
But like, why do I ever want to own that farm pickup or that car or whatever? And I've often thought, maybe incorrectly, that some of those kind of options don't seem to be as available or certainly talked about or understood in agriculture. That if I just want to secure the use of a tractor for 5 years, I want to pay effectively for its depreciation and the cost of that money, right? If at the end of it, when I don't want it anymore and it's got a residual value of say £100,000 and there's a £100,000 balloon, well, why does that matter? Why did I ever try and buy the whole thing? Which is what we do with hire purchase, isn't it? And that can be over expensive and be hard on our cash flow. We're maybe trying too hard and pushing the cash flow too hard.
Yeah, well, you said 2 points there, actually, are quite interesting. One is obviously you were saying regarding different products and different options. Well, some of that can be driven by the customer, and some of that, you mentioned PCP, which we don't really tend to do in agriculture. But then there is options of working with the dealer.
Why is that, though? Is that because getting a good second-hand value? I mean, cars are easy. Everyone knows, well, they can work out a Ford Focus at 5 years old will be worth X amount. Is it because farm machinery is a bit harder to get that
Can be.
buyback? Yeah.
It can be. I also think generally with a PCP product, it relies, obviously, a PCP product, at the end, you've got an option. You can either pay the balloon and own the vehicle, the car, let's say, I don't know, pickup truck, let's say. Or the dealer will go, okay, I'll have it back, and then you walk away. So that's fine, but with farm machinery, depending on what it is, especially cultivation equipment, things like that, is the price, it doesn't generally work out because you've got to take into account refurbishment costs.
Yeah.
So with a pickup truck, it's unlikely I'm going to have to replace all the tyres, all the brakes. It's been serviced throughout. So
Probably only service cost as opposed to
correct, rather than a refurbishment cost. And then when it comes to sort of the tractor side on that, potentially, yes, you could do that. But what you tend to find is customers who do contract hire generally have fleets. They don't have to be honest, but it's normally when we do contract hire, normally, and this is driven by the customers, it's normally four to five tractors at once, and plus up to 100. But you'll find that most of the time the contract hire, it is an option, and that's basically like a PCP.
Yeah.
Admittedly, you don't own it at the end, but at the end, the dealer buys it back.
Well, what that gives you, what contract hire or PCP gives you, some certainty, doesn't it?
Yeah, so with especially a tractor, because you'll find all the servicing is included, all the maintenance is included in the price. So the only thing you have to pay for is if you wrap it around a telegraph pole.
Yeah. Hopefully that's insured.
Exactly. Hopefully that's insured.
Yeah.
So, or it should be. And things like tyre wear and stuff like that. But you'll find that traditionally the customers haven't really looked at that, and that's one point I think because cash flow has been, obviously, admittedly, farmers not been booming at all, but cash flow, the way to look at cash flow, which is what you mentioned, hasn't been looked at in great detail. Really, I think for most farmers, cash flows and like, oh, the accountant deals with that. It's not really something they look at. And now I think particularly that we're going back to being flexible, going looking at your cash flow, looking at when your income comes in. Is it coming in from diversification products? And one of the options all finance companies, or most finance companies can do, to be honest, is instead of doing your straight, like you said, just straight monthly payments, well, we can, there's options to build custom payment profiles for the customer.
So you can put some like seasonality into it
Yes.
when you're looking at
seasonality.
Yeah.
So to give you an example, there's a certain chicken farmer, and they are basically egg producers. So for a couple of months of the year, they have no income while they're the changeover. So we put that into their program, so it suits their cash flow.
Yeah.
Or things like, I'm an arable farmer, I get all my income after I harvest my crops, but the flip side of that is I can't make my payments until once a year, so the interest can be.
Well, you look at combinable crop production, so what we do, and you kind of think it's almost like, our cash flow is like spend all year.
Yeah.
And there's only really like a couple of months a year where you actually get it back from the farm point.
Correct, but then if you dive into
it's a cash flow nightmare, isn't it? But
it can be.
Yeah.
It can be.
And actually, you can have really good, fundamentally profitable businesses. But as someone told me years ago, I was a bank manager, or something, he said, you only run out of cash once, right? How profitable your cash flow is ultimately king, isn't it, for any business? So
I think that's a really interesting point that you raised, Ed, because that point about, if you are trying to just do a monthly payment and you have 2 or 3 months in a year where your income is practically zero and you can't make, or you really struggle to make those payments, why go through that if you can sit down with someone and say, here's how my business works, and let's build something that'll fit my business.
Yeah, I think looking at it, most customers do want to own the machine at the end. And I think that's a traditional view of it. Whether it's right or wrong for their business is a different question. And if you are going to do that, well, why don't we build something that suits your cash flow? Because you're right, going back to your point regarding the arable farm, spend, big lump of money. Well, if you look into it in detail, a lot of times now, most, I shouldn't say all, but most customers diversify into something. They've got something else on the farm going on. So why don't we plan something for that? If you're renting a building, it's regular income. Okay, use that then.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, I suppose? I guess the ownership thing as well that high purchase gives you over, say, PCP, for instance, is those, traditionally we've had the capital allowances and whatever, haven't we, to use.
Correct.
Where, cause it's that boom and bust type industry. We have, good years, bad years, mainly bad years recently, but in those good years, there can often be a big, bit of a tax incentive to change a tractor or buy a new piece of machinery. But, if you get carried away and spend all that kind of profit, then you maybe can't pay tax bill at the end of the year or whatever as well. So still, even if you maybe have the cash available at the time, finance is perhaps a more sensible option then to make sure, again, cash flow is still there to pay the tax bill in those good years.
Correct. And then there's other options such as leasing. So the customer can lease the let's use an example. I don't know, a drill, for instance. They could lease the drill. They don't own it at the end, but they're paying a rental throughout the term. Now that's a rental. So obviously that has implications. So it's the same as obviously renting something, really.
Yeah. So like, I think when you see finance deals on new machinery from dealer tractors or whatever, often there's like subsidy. You see these deals like 0% finance or subsidised finance.
Yeah.
Again, I've seen farmers talk with before, and they assume, there's no free lunches. There's always a catch kind of thing. If I went to a dealer and said, look, if I pay outright for it, will I get a better price in the first place? That kind of thing. Is that myth or reality, or is
the reality of that is quite simple. The subsidy is paid for by the manufacturer. Generally, the manufacturer will pay a subsidy into that. What you're asking is, if I'm a farmer and I go in and pay cash for it, can I get that subsidy in lieu?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. There's rules about that.
There's rules.
Yeah.
You can't take that in lieu. You can't take that. It's the same price. It has to be the same price.
Yeah.
Whether you take it on finance or not.
So those kind of deals, that'd be the manufacturer just trying to turn, basically get some more turnover of machinery and get some sold there. Yeah.
We were prepared to.
If you were prepared to do it, that's fine. It doesn't have to be the manufacturer.
I guess it's just a different way of offering a discount. Yeah, effectively.
These days, buy one get one free.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. And then at the end, how flexible is it? This is something that comes up quite often. Like someone gets put something onto a 5 years, whatever, and then suddenly decide they want to change a week in the middle. Can they move that finance onto something else easily? Or
in what regard do you think?
Because someone can go back to your nosy drill. So this drill on finance, and then after a couple of years, they said, "Do you know what? This isn't actually working for me. I want to swap it to. I want to buy a different drill."
Okay.
Is it easy to say? Can I move that finance, or do I have to pay that off now to sell that drill? And then
Yes, so most of what I can just speak for the company I work for, most of what we do is what's called fixed rate. So it is a term, it's a set payment for 5, let's say, well, we do anything from 1 to 7 years, but let's say 5 years for this example here. If you wanted to settle at year 3, you're halfway through the contract, you get a settlement figure. So that's the money you still owe on that. Now, depending on what you're buying next, you can roll that money onto the next.
You can, because that could put somebody off.
Yeah.
If I put somebody on for 5 years, then I don't like it. Then I say, right, settlement figure. Have I suddenly got to find that much capital to pay that off, to sell that machine to buy another, or can I say I want to roll that onto another machine?
You can roll it onto another machine. Obviously, you still owe that money, so it'd be owed onto that. So what happens is the new deal would settle the old deal, and then that would get rolled onto what you're buying next.
So following on from that, James, I mean, obviously we've been against the background in the last few years where first we saw interest rates going up and up and up and like kind of after the pandemic, but now they're coming down. And actually, topically today, the Bank of England have got a meeting today, and there might be another cut today. They're talking about it. So obviously we think goalposts moving constantly like that. I guess you can get a little bit like a rabbit in the headlights for the farmer going, well, if I wait, it'll be cheaper. It'll be cheaper because rates are coming down now, right?
Yeah.
And is it possible to like refinance deals? Let's say you took out, I don't know, if you'd done a thing a few years ago, you might be paying, a 6, 7, 8% type higher purchase type rates or whatever, and you could get a better deal today. Can you, in some cases, say, right, hang on, I want to refinance that machine. I don't actually want to change the machine at all. I want to kind of pay off what's owing on that combine or that tractor or whatever, and then finance it again, but maybe a better rate as things come down. Or does that fixed? Is it always fixed? Or
no, it's not. Yeah. You could. It depends on how much equity you've got in the machine. To be honest, that's the main. Depends how far you are into it. Obviously, with anything you're paying interest, you're paying more interest at the front end because obviously that you haven't paid off much of the capital. Yeah. So it does depend on where you are in the contract, and it also depends how much equity you've got in there. We don't tend to find customers generally do that, to be honest. Unless there is a big difference, because it generally doesn't work out a huge difference unless the interest rates have just gone like that over 5 years. It generally doesn't tend to work out. To be fair, it's a good idea, but practically you find most of the time it doesn't.
And I guess with so much movement over this last 5-year period or so, of rates first going right up and then coming down. You got a bit of a situation at the moment, you might be finding this, Jason, where people are, kind of their existing tractors on really quite cheap money, or is this, and suddenly they're getting a finance quote for like its replacement, and it's like, wow, that's a lot more than it was.
What's happened recently is that would work if the machinery prices were like this.
Yeah.
But what's happened is they had cheap money, but now they had expensive money, the tractors are cheap. Now the tractor price has gone like this.
Yeah.
Then, okay, it's cheaper money, but it doesn't offset the rise in the cost. So the reality is, like I said, practically, it doesn't really work because the machinery just goes up and up in price generally.
Yeah, and particularly post-pandemic, that's been crazy, hasn't it? I mean, tractor had a quote £250,000 for a tractor that like 5 or 6 years ago was 120, 130,000. It's near enough doubled in.
Correct, and 1% interest change is not going to offset that.
Yeah.
So
you look back at that actually, and you think,
it's like I said, practically it doesn't generally tend to work. I've never done it, I'll be honest.
Yeah,
it hasn't worked.
So I think that's the main thing I'd take from this, and right back to our first conversation, I think we had at Lamrat, Des, that whole point of making it work for me, and I mean, we've always tried to do this, going back to, as Clive said, everybody farms differently, and they're doing the same thing, they do it in a different way. So we always try and do that with that. We've got every kind of machine you can bring. Because if somebody wants to, I'm not going to judge somebody if they want to use that machine to plant it as opposed to that machine. Yes. The same way with finance, I think we need to look at it from the point of view of how's it going to work for my business or your business.
Well, and you can make things fit, can't you? I mean, but be careful, a bit of man maths here sometimes. But I think you can make things fit by, I remember way back when I was at college, it was very much almost like regimented that a certain size farm would have a 3 meter drill. If it was over a certain acres, maybe then you needed a 4, a 6, and but with weather patterns and whatever, actually, and labour profiles, and say every farm being different, it's a case of like, actually, you could be a relatively small acreage these days, and if you're a one-man band, maybe with another job, to get the work done, you need perhaps, a far bigger machine than someone on paper would say would get your acreage done. But then you go, okay, it's going to cost more money, more capital. But if you finance it or just have it over a longer period, well, it doesn't just end up being the same thing. A 3 meter drill, say, spread over 5 years is only the same as a 6 meter one over 10 years, right? If it's the same acre.
Correct.
What's the,
calculation as well.
Yeah.
Look at it and you say, well, how much time and save for me? And
It's cost per acre, isn't it? Yeah. Per hectare.
Yeah, and nothing's more expensive than not being able to get the job done. I mean, this is why, much as I hate the cost of farm machinery, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with farm machinery. I think it's like the most amazing stuff, but you hate owning it because it just costs you, doesn't it? It's not like buying a house or some land, which is an asset that hopefully will constantly appreciate and be worth more. It all depreciates, it all breaks, it all costs to maintain. But it's a necessary part of, without it, we can't do the job. And that gets right back to what we're saying with that lack of confidence in investing. But again, something we touched on earlier with what's changing with these inheritance tax laws and rules and whatever.
Yes.
I guess that's maybe changing people's attitudes towards finance in terms of what, exactly. Do we want to keep building up a bigger and bigger asset pool just to pass a tax bill on?
yeah, well, wait, it's slightly not exactly to do with the financing point here, but going back to your point there about people not wanting that asset part, we've had a lot of people here just come and say they've got a whole stack of stuff here that never will buy it because that's why it's that's
and that's, I guess,
in there doing it.
Well, do you think contract hire will become more popular off the back of that? Then
It is.
They go, I tell you what, I'm just going to hire all the kit I need. I don't want to own any of it.
I think that's it. I think contract hire is definitely being looked at more and more and more. And traditionally for us, the contract hire side was always the big vegetable growers in the fens, to be honest. That was sort of the main one because obviously they're growing salads and that sort of stuff and vegetables for the supermarket. So they know like they've got they want a fixed cost. That's all they care about, a fixed cost. But I think now people are looking at it, like I say, from the inheritance tax point of view. I think people are getting wiser to looking at how their farm budgets work and their spending. And I think one of the things that people definitely need to do potentially is when we speak to customers, we find generally you'll ask the customer about their business and they'll say, I'm up 200 cows.
Yeah.
And you get that. And I think it needs to be more of a conversation. I think there needs to be a lot more detail. The customer's looking at more detail, and I think they need to relay that onto whoever's looking at their finance to go into more detail to give them the best options. Obviously, we can tell them what options are available, but a lot of the time, like you say, there could be inheritance tax worries depending on the age of the farmer, all that sort of stuff, and what the business is doing. I think it's got to be a more detailed conversation. And most of this stuff I'm talking about is just talking about the farm.
And I think this is one of the big mistakes they've made with the inheritance. I genuinely don't think they realise just how much capital was tied up in making a farm work. I mean, we're mid-harvest at the moment. I took some food to the guys last night, stood in the field, and I'm thinking there's like £1.5 million worth of kit in this field, in this one field. The combine, a few tractors and trailers, baler working in the distance. You think you soon get there. So you think actually with their generous £1 million a person allowance or whatever, you're thinking, well, it doesn't even cover that before we start talking buildings and
and if you hire it,
so
cost is not
exactly suddenly it's not my asset anymore, is it? Well, there's an interesting question, James. Like, so okay, let's take a scenario. I want to need tractor or cultivator from Jason or whatever it happens to be. Right, well, probably not a cultivator for me, but anyway. And so I want to finance this. Obviously, it's a competitive market. There's, close brothers aren't the only players in this game. And I've probably got a relationship with my bank. Well, I have still got like an individual manager or whatever. How do I choose? How do I know who's the right people to go to? Because like all industries, I'm sure there's the sharks in the water, and there's good guys, and there's people that understand agriculture better. How do you make that choice?
From a customer's point of view, obviously it can be relationship based. You've got the people you deal with. I would always say speak to a few different people. Generally, speak to the people who are going to work with you. Going back to if you have someone in this industry, or we've found people who are within this industry have come from a non-farming side, shall we say, and not understanding the business, they won't give you the options available. It'll be a quick conversation. It's this, buy. I always read the small print. It's a good indicator as well. And I think someone who's going to work with you and someone who's going to build with your business. And I think that's key, especially in giant.
Yeah, because I think you see it sometimes, not so much in farming, but our friends that finance cars and stuff. It can almost be a bit lazy sometimes to take the easy route. It's like the dealer's got an in-house finance. It's going to cost you so much a month. Sign here.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's worth that shopping around.
And dealing, to give you an example from our side of things, we're an agricultural team. We are all experienced in the industry. Most of us have been either farmers' sons or been in agricultural finance. So if you're speaking to people who understand your industry, I think that's key as well. It makes a massive difference. So if you're speaking to someone who finances tarmac and machines, then you're probably not going to get the options required for your business as well.
And that's just important. Because a lot we've been talking, probably most of these conversations, the theme that's come through it is the understanding it and seeing what's going to work for me. You need to be talking to somebody who, as we've just said, knows that there's those massive fluctuations in income, knows that there's all those things that are coming on. It's not just a business where you make X sales per month.
Yeah.
No, and I will quite happily speak to a customer, and I have at times politely just said, "Are you sure you want to do that because of this, this, and this?"
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people wouldn't say that to a customer because it'd be, you might do yourself out of business, you might upset them, might walk away. But I think the conversation I'd have with them or my colleagues would definitely be, "Are you sure you want to do it like that because of this, this, and this?" And then, good point, actually.
Yeah, and I guess it's the role of a dealer as well in this, where someone can come to you and say, "Right, I need this machine, James. This is what I need to get the job done or whatever." But quite frankly, can't write you a check for it right now. You can signpost and help with various options there. Yeah.
The main thing is that from that perspective, the person's having a conversation with the finance man, you got to just be open about it. Say, this is the situation. What's the best way of handling it?
Yeah. Correct.
To be honest with them and say, you won't be able to do it this way because of X, Y, Z. You might be able to do it this way.
Correct. And I think like you said, it's definitely a three-way conversation with the customer, dealer, and the finance person, because I just think it needs to be an open conversation. I think, obviously, the finance person has certain details they will not release to the dealer. They won't say anything to them about certain private things, 100%. But if it's the initial, we're talking about quoting and what they can do, and definitely, there's obviously it's a way of speaking to people and making sure everyone's happy with it as well. And I think it's also, if you build a relationship as well, then obviously if the customer does decide, actually, I bought that plough, for instance, just give you an example, so now I need a power home.
Yeah.
So then the question is, okay, well, can we add that onto it as well? What's the options available there? So
Interesting. Okay, well, talking of ploughs and power, we could go.
Yeah.
Rather than just sit in a meeting room. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yes.
Nice avatar there, Clive, if you need another one.
Oh yeah. And so no 8, no 6.
Six. Six.
Very different machine to a 12, isn't it?
Yeah. Good.
So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing what we're talking about when we're just in your boardroom there, Jason. It's like, this kind of kit just makes the job so it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Well, this is the point. And going back to the conversation we've just been having inside, is the fact of it. If I'm looking at this and I've decided this is the way I want to run my farm, but I might be scared off because I'm thinking, well, avatars aren't cheap. Let's face it. Then it's a case of doing my sums and working out if I do buy it and spread it, work out the cost with my finance man, see how that fits, and then see what that does for me from a point of view of cost saving or speeding up or.
Well, this is a good case in point, like system change. Let's say if you are going from if we're looking for more efficiency, because as we just said, we're going to have to get more efficient if we're going to compete. So if you're looking at kind of like a wholesale system change to a farm business to do that, that's a big step, isn't it? Okay, you might have some, your existing machinery can all go, have your farm sale or trade it in or whatever. But if suddenly you see it sometimes go, no, you go to drilling, it's all very well, but if you go out and spend £100,000 on the drill, how can you afford to do that? That's not going to save you money, it's going to cost them money.
And then you find as well, if the customer is looking at this, and let's say they can do it, that's great, but then the other option is, okay, we can't do it. The next question is, well, what can I afford? And then we go back to the dealer and say, okay, well, I can't quite afford this one, but what else have you got?
That's brilliant, and that I think is something that doesn't happen enough. But having that conversation around, instead of, and I think even from the point of view of, we know farming's a lonely job, And if you've got to make all the decisions yourself, it's a massive thing. Have those conversations and talk when you're talking to your finance man and say, I want to do this, but this is all I can afford. What can we do? And then go back to the dealer and say, well, what can we do within this price bracket? And
correct. It needs to be, like I said, it needs to be a conversation, and a preemptive conversation is always great because you can get to the machine the customer wants, or maybe not quite the right one, but one to get them going. And then, like say, if they're changing the system and they get a slightly smaller one, maybe a bit further down the line, they upgrade as a business saves a bit more money or makes a bit more money. And it's having that conversation early and becoming part of an actual advisory role rather than just a end of sale role, shall we say. I think that's what needs to change.
I think it's what always fascinates me about come here as well, because I think Amtec's quite unique in that this is a great place where you can kind of see pretty much all the options. You go to any, dealer that's tied to a certain manufacturer, they might have a load of avatars and shiny gorge kits in there, but I reckon you've got probably just about every brand, every size, and every age.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it goes from maybe a plough-based system right through to the avatar, because as I said, inside who am I to judge how somebody wants to run their farm? So
I was going to make that kind of like that kind of step, almost kind of stereotype. Saying, well, the bigger drill for the bigger farm, the smaller drill for the smaller farm. Doesn't work. We're saying earlier, it doesn't work like that now because of the way that even that smaller farm might want some bigger kit because he's got another job off farm. And he's doing everything himself. I don't think there's such a thing anymore. It's like the right size machine is for your circumstance, not necessarily for your acreage.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, like I say, situations are changing so quickly. I think it's just been one step ahead of the games.
Yeah, there's a guy on the forum who, amazingly, he runs a Claydon system. I think he's published like 1,500 odd acres on his own, and he's got a job. And he's just got the right kit to do it. I think contractors come in and harvest. Yeah. But he kind of sprays, fertilises, drills it. And then you think with the right equipment, that's perfectly possible. But I've seen other people go, you need 4 or 5 people. Or,
Well, that has one of the massive things that's changed in farming, isn't it? Whereas years ago you had all these people, labour was so much more. Now, people you stripped all that out with technology or the machinery or whatever it is, and suddenly, like you say, one person's suddenly running a huge acreage on their own. It's hard work, but
SFI and things like SFI for us actually has given us a bit of a buffer at the moment. So from a harvest point of view, the accountants would argue we're slightly overcapacity at the moment because clearly the farm being SFI options giving us that bit of buffer. But Tuesday evening, I think we took my dad to getting on a bit now. Got some fish and chips, took him to a guys in the field or whatever. Stopped the combine, and we sat there and had like a harvest kind of tea. Fish and chips. But we probably had like 3/4 an hour downtime. And my dad was saying this is always full circle, right? Because I remember when I was growing up on the farm, there was always that time to stop. Then we've gone for a period of like pushing capacity and equipment so hard is literally you didn't even want to get off the cab for a wee. It was like keep going no matter what. And then we're there like this monster combine sitting behind it, thinking, well, it'll get done tomorrow. But so you can buy actually you can to some extent buy the capacity to make the job either pleasant or a nightmare, whichever way you want to look at it.
Well, it's making it a little bit more pleasant if you're going to be doing it for the rest of your life,
Exactly, yeah, you've got exactly. Hard, yes. You soon fall out of love with these two. Looks like hard work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, so no, like you say, Clive, there's every kind of machine, some which probably be too small to put acid finance on, but then again, if you need several bits of kit, like James was saying earlier, you might want plough and a power harrow and something else. And
it's an age limit, Gabe. It depends on the piece of equipment. Yeah, there is an age limit on stuff, but it does depend on the piece of equipment.
Right.
And there's a big long list, but most stuff, to be fair, 15 years old, you'll be fine with.
All right, I've got in my head that if something is over 7 years or something. Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, we can go longer than that. Some pieces of equipment are a lot longer than that. It just depends on the equipment, what it is, and we have a list of equipment and what it is. But no, you can, and we say value as well. Well, to be honest, we tend to do anything over 25,000, which nowadays isn't a lot.
No,
so
no.
It's you can. You'd be surprised what you can do.
And going back to your lease point, if somebody wanted to just not to own a bit of kit, but just do a trying to think of the right term now, not a hire purchase, a lease, contract lease, whatever. If we effectively gave you an underwrite value of when it was coming back, you could then work that out for somebody.
So are you talking like it?
Say, for example, this machine here, if somebody said they didn't want to buy it, but they wanted to lease it for 3 years, or whatever, as long as you had a value from us of what we were to buy it back at, or how would you work that out, or could you not work that out?
On a contract hire basis, it can be maintained or unmaintained. So at the end, we'd put a residual value on it. So we cannot. So unlike some of our competitors, we can hold the residual value ourselves. So Close Brothers will always own it, and at the end, we will sell it.
Okay.
So generally, that's something we do with the dealer, or doesn't have to be with the dealer. And the residual value, we would put a figure on it, and that would be a trade value, and we'd work with the dealer as well on that as well to come to an agreement on that at the end. So
so there is options to do that as well. Yeah.
And generally, like I said, it involves the three of us, the customer, dealer, and ourselves, and what we can do. So we can hold the residual value, or if you wanted, you could hold the residual value as a dealer.
Okay.
So what that means at the end, you agree to buy it back for a set figure.
Okay.
And the customer will pay a higher charge throughout the term.
I guess that's tricky from a dealer's point of view, though. Not just engaging where's the market going to be, say, 3 years from now. But when we're talking about stuff like the drill, the different thing is coming back like, freshly remetaled and ready to work.
Yeah, I guess you would.
Absolutely worn out. It's quite a lot.
I guess you can work that in though, surely.
100%.
Yeah.
So you can put in a maintenance clauses, and you can put in a return conditions as well. So, for instance, everything needs to be within a certain condition when it comes back.
Mm-hmm.
You can put because with a customer, the customer's genuinely going to look after it as if they're own. There's not a problem.
No.
To be fair, and you can put clauses in within that as well. And you can do asset inspections throughout the term as well, to make sure that it's being looked after. That's not necessarily a problem. And to be honest, it's very rare that I have had, can't speak for my colleagues, but it's very rare I've had a contract hire where the machine has been, not looked after. Because the reality of it is, they're doing it because they need it to do a job.
Yeah.
If it's not going to do a job because they're not looked after it, then what's the point of having it in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've contracted my cars in the past, to be honest, and my own attitude, or before they've gone back, with it's just like an alloy wheel that needs that's been curved. I've kind of had a more thing done before it goes back, because with the car contract tires, they'll only charge you
whatever the repair's going to be.
You're better to sort it yourself. So
yeah.
I think every time I've sent a contract tire car back, it's gone back shot to retail. But it valeted and wheels done. It's like, right, there you go. You can't say you.
No, but I think the only reason I asked about that, whether it's possible on a piece of machinery like this, just say, for example, somebody wanted to get into the industry and couldn't afford to start going buying stuff, or wanted to do some contracting and didn't have the kit or whatever. If there's options where you can look at it and actually get yourself, without having to invest, I know it's still that money's going out the whole time, but without having to actually invest in an asset, you can actually have the piece of kit you need to go and do a job for someone. I mean, obviously short term, we can hire it to them, but if somebody wants it on a long term basis, there is that option as well.
We pay for the use of it, then, aren't you?
You are
exactly.
They're trying to buy it, yeah.
And I know it might be a bad example on a machine that you don't use all year, but on a machine that you use more often, it is possible, isn't it?
Yeah, and you'd agree on an hour usage or acreage usage or hectare usage. You'd agree everything before, so it is quite open. It's very open on what it's going to do, for how long, and that sort of stuff. So it's all like I said, it's going back to that negotiation with the customer. What are you actually going to do?
The other thing that we've not mentioned that I believe is the case is it's something's financed. Does it, as a consumer, give you a bit of protection as well? The reason I bring this up, there was a thread on the forum literally last week about a guy he wasn't naming manufacturers or machines or dealers or anybody involved with, but he'd clearly got a problem with two identical machines. One was 12 months old and the other one was 3 months old. He had the same problem with both of these machines. And the advice he was being given by a lot of people on there was saying, well, if the finance, you should speak to the finance company, because technically the finance company still owns it.
Correct.
And that would give you a barrier between you and to try and negotiate a solution from the manufacturer, perhaps.
Correct. I would definitely, the first thing I would say is there has been a case in the past where I've seen a customer stop their payments to the finance company. Never do that.
Right.
okay, straight away, because obviously that would impact you on a credit record in the future.
Yeah.
The first thing I do is definitely speak to the finance company, and then what generally happens is a finance company will speak to the manufacturer and go, okay, what are you doing? You know, are you looking into this? Has this been done? So you have another person or organisation helping you resolve this issue.
Yeah.
I haven't had this recently. I have had it in the past, with the other manufacturers, particularly tractors. You know, something they're struggling to get to the bottom of. And what you generally tend to find, if there's like you said, the finance company is involved and are well aware of what's going on, we will ask questions, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say, stopping the payments doesn't really help because it's not actually the finance company's problem in that respect.
This is the problem. We technically need, you know, I've had it before. Oh, just stop my finance payments. Please don't do that. Well, you end up, it will not affect the manufacturer. It'll affect you.
Yeah. And but I guess what it gives you as the consumer there is you've got the support of probably a bigger organisation on your side, you know, writing those letters and asking questions. I go, what are you doing to help the customer out with the machine?
And potentially someone that's got a bit more clout with the manufacturer. And that's interesting.
So that's a kind of perhaps you know, hopefully that's not something anyone wants to be in that situation. But if you do find yourself in that situation, there is another layer of protection.
Yeah, it's a rare occurrence. I'll be honest, it is a rare occurrence. I'd say someone on the forum, but I bet there's thousands of others who, generally, to be fair, if the dealer's on board, because they'll go back to your dealer, the manufacturer's on board, you know, they'll generally...
Metal kit's pretty good these days, to be honest.
It's a rare occurrence. I can only ever think of a couple of times it's happened.
Yeah.
To be fair, in both cases, the manufacturer at the end did sort it out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time it's when somebody's under pressure as well. Especially this time of year. It's good. It's going to take this long to sort. No, I've got time.
Also, user error sometimes.
Well, it does happen.
Not always the machine.
Does happen. No, good. It's been an interesting chat.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Hopefully that was useful. Jason, I found it really interesting. And
Very.
James, thanks a lot. Yeah, really nice to meet you.
And you?
Good. Thank you.